Yes. Welcome once again back to Black Power Media. I'm Jared Ball, joined by Jacquie, Luqman, Sister CoCo. What's up? What's up to the
Yes.
comrades? Greetings.
Can you hear me?
Welcome everybody. Yes, we hear you.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Um, well, let's not stand on ceremony. Greetings to everybody in the chat. Please let everybody know you're here. Put the live in your social medias, and we will welcome once again back to the platform the one and only Dr. Cornel West, current
Jared, are
candidate for
you
the
frozen?
nomination for the Green Party for President of the United States in 2024. I'm not frozen. Am I frozen? I don't think I'm frozen.
Is that right? Is somebody frozen?
No, I think good.
Am I frozen? Who's frozen? You all look fine to me. Am I the only one seeing it work properly?
You're working fine.
Dr. West, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, I can hear your lovely voice here.
Okay.
All
All right, so we made it. All right. Dr. West, good to see you again. Thanks for coming back to the platform.
Oh, it's always a blessing to be informed and inspired by you all. I can tell you that.
Right on. So I know we have a bunch of new sort of new round of questions for you on this visit, and we encourage people to revisit our previous discussions with Professor West as we've sort of re-invited him back to the platform in the context of his candidacy. Jacquie, CoCo, either of you want to get us started this afternoon? Yeah, how would you like to go?
So because I'm short on time because I ran from one meeting, about to do the live hour here at By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik, shameless plug for my day job. Just really appreciative of you, Dr. West, keeping your word, coming on this platform and others, being willing to be held accountable for as you know your campaign as it goes forward. And it's great to be in front of you a little bit, because the last time we talked was at the BAP second or third anniversary when I called you to get an audio clip for that event. So
Lord,
that was fantastic.
That's beautiful. How long would that be, my dear sister?
That was a while ago. Indeed. So let me ask you, let me start with this. There is an enormous amount of intentional confusion and dare say propaganda in this country surrounding the proxy war in Ukraine that anti-imperialists understand is a US, EU, NATO propelled project. This is, of course, not the line that we hear in the U.S. media. It's in the U.S. media and in the media of the Western allies of the U.S. The line is that this is Putin's war. That he, literally woke up one day and decided, I'm just going to invade Ukraine because I hate Ukrainians and I want to kill them all. So there has emerged this narrative. Personalizing this conflict on the person of Vladimir Putin and however good or bad he is or is not. And that has revived a not at all dormant anti-communist strain in this country, even though Russia is not a communist country. Putin is very much capitalist. But anti-communism is like a second religion to anti-blackness in this country, right? So that was hard. And it's also a holdover from the Russiagate foolishness from 2016. Right. Okay, so you seem to have come around on not solely focusing on the saving the Ukrainian people from Russia in this context, but you still kind of frame that conflict as Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And I wonder if by doing that, you are giving space that should not be given, in my opinion, just looking at the facts, to this faction of the US neocons, that includes the Democrats and the Republicans, who
Right.
are still on the, we need to destroy Russia and Vladimir Putin is evil track, without, which completely obscures the role that the US government and the European Union and NATO played in fomenting this conflict in Ukraine. We use the starting point of 2014, but many can argue that it goes back farther than that, to the end of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
do you think that it is a an effective and correct analysis to call Russia's involvement in Ukraine an illegal invasion, as opposed to Russia's response to their territorial sovereignty being constantly threatened by the expansion of NATO, uh, NATO weapons being placed in countries along its border, in the former Warsaw Pact countries, and the Ukrainian government waging a civil war against ethnic Russian people since 2014? Is illegal invasion of Ukraine the correct anti-imperialist analysis, even if we can
Mm-hmm.
agree that Vladimir Putin just might be the devil for all we know, you know,
Right.
even,
Right. Right.
even if he's an oligarch, even if he could be as evil as people think he is. But Russia's concerns about NATO and US aggression and what has happened to people in Ukraine since 2014, was that an invasion? Was it an invasion? Was it illegal? And should we be calling it that?
No, I appreciate that question. No, my dear brother Jamu's been pushing me on this as we wrestle together on this, because you recall that my own tweets, as it were, I always start off with the expanding NATO is an arm of U.S. global power, and that it constitutes the starting point of an analysis because it provokes, it pushes the Russian Federation in a certain direction. And so the framework, the very context which sets the particular response is very important here. It's just that I don't want to downplay the free agency of not just Putin, but of the Russian elites themselves. So that on the one hand, I think I'm agreeing with you wholeheartedly that you begin with you saw these statements that I put out, that we had press release and we go into detail about promising that we would not move 1 inch toward Russian territory when we promised a Gorbachev way back in the 1990s. Next thing you know, you've got 13 more countries who are within the NATO orbit, and NATO has always been an extension of U.S. imperial power, and that therefore that's going to always set the very context. But then Putin himself, or the Russian elites themselves, they do have a response. And that's where the invasion, and what I call not just illegal, but a criminal invasion, because I believe in the sovereignty of nations and the violation of sovereignty, be it U.S. in Iraq or U.S. in Pakistan, killing elites, whatever it is. It could be in Africa, it could be in Latin America, and so forth. That needs to be called into question. So for me, it's a both and response, you see, that there's no false equivalency, I hope, in my formulations in terms of the U.S. empire, its power, its scope, and its viciousness. But the Russian Federation still takes some responsibility, and therefore it is an invasion occupation in that sense, and it is criminal to the degree to which it's resulting in killing innocent people. So that we have to be able, to me, to have a both and analysis here, that does not. See, what I don't want is what you were rightly highlight. What I don't want is the obscuring of the American imperial role. That's why I put it up front in each statement, in the Twitter, in the press release. It is up front. Now, what's interesting is you could imagine, oh, we've got our dear brother. Just want to acknowledge we got our dear brother that we hadn't Kalonji that we hadn't had at the beginning. But but right now, as you can imagine, you know, I'm getting hit for what? Being Putin's apologist. You know, everywhere, all of my interviews, you ain't nothing but a Putin apologist. How much money you getting from the Russians? And I say, I'm just trying to tell the truth. I'm just trying to make sure that we tell the truth. And in telling the truth, you have to begin with the U.S. imperial policies, and you have to begin with U.S. imperial power in that regard. But I don't want to downplay. Let me ask you this question, my dear sister. Would you argue that the invasion is an invasion, or would you argue that the invasion is not an invasion at all?
I would argue that it is not an invasion, because I argue that it is Russia's response to not just the immediate provocations from 2014, but decades of provocation from the United States. And this military response was carried out only after the Russian Federation on several
I think
accounts
so.
And core in Russia tried. Are we having a problem with connections?
Yeah, we had a glitch there for a second.
I think there may have been just one quick second though, but but your flow is still in place and nice.
Oh, okay. Well, let me be brief. So I do not call it an invasion.
So you wouldn't call it invasion at all? Oh, I see.
No, I call this Russia's response to U.S., EU, NATO aggression using Ukraine against Russia, which this has always been, because Russia did not respond militarily until all avenues for avoiding a military response were exhausted. And those avenues were entered into by the Russian Federation. The Minsk Accords, which were signed by Ukraine, Russia, France, Germany, and was observed by the UN Security Council. That agreement was not adhered to by anybody but Russia. And then it comes out last year, I think early last year, where the German former Chancellor Angela Merkel said that when they signed the accords, they never intended to agree to them. They intended to use that time that they signed those accords, which was supposed to be a ceasefire in the civil war from 2014, to arm Ukraine. And then the former French prime minister came out and validated what Angela Merkel said. So Russia responded, telling the United States, Germany, France, all of the UN Security Council, the only thing that needs to be done for there not to be a military response to this 2014 Bidenian government against ethnic Russians in Ukraine that had gone on for 8 years, the only thing you have to do to keep us from responding militarily to Ukraine killing our people, killing their own people in the eastern region in Ukraine, who just happen to be ethnic.
Right. And that's the 14,000 dead there, yeah.
Yes.
But then,
the Russian and let me just say that when the Russian Federation said, Vladimir Putin said, I don't know why I'm blanking right now on the foreign minister's name, Sergei Lavrov, and other representatives of the Russian Federation repeatedly told people they were in negotiations with that all you have to do is adhere to the Minsk Accords and recognize the right to self-determination and those referendum votes from those people in the eastern region of Ukraine who voted to secede from Ukraine after the 2014 coup. That's all you have to do, and there will be no military response. And no government wanted to adhere to that. They all kept giving weapons to Ukraine, and then they turned around and said that Vladimir Putin illegally invaded Ukraine. That is an incorrect, historically, that's an incorrect analysis of what happened. So no, I don't call it an invasion. Is it something I support? I don't support war. I do, however, support self-defense. And to me, this is like an international extension of the age-old argument in our circles. Like, is it violence or is it self-defense?
So speaking of that
I'm
question,
peaceful until you put your hands on me.
Speaking of that question, if I can, I do think we need to. We have another special guest joining us this afternoon to join the conversation. And by all means, Dr. West, please respond. But I don't want to belabor the fact that Dhoruba bin Wahad is here as well. So welcome to him, and we look forward to
absolutely
him joining the conversation. But forgive that interruption, Dr. West. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good to see you, man.
Dhoruba, you're muted. You're muted. Go ahead. Unmute yourself. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I see you on some feet don't fail me now, huh?
Brother, I'm just giving you a hug through the technology. Glad to know you strong as ever. Strong as
well, you keep it going, brother. You keep it going. And I really appreciate Jackie's response to the Ukraine, because I was going to add a little bit to that too. It's really incorrect to classify the Russian existential existence as a nation when they laid out this thing since the Minsk Accords. We know what's in the files. We know what's in the State Department and what the United States has in its portfolio as far as foreign policy is concerned. Russia is to be considered an enemy under all circumstances and any circumstances, and therefore NATO, which shouldn't have existed after the end of the Cold War, which shouldn't have existed after the dismantling of the Eastern Bloc nations, it's still going on. It's in Africa. It's no longer an alliance. So why are we pretending that NATO is somehow backing democracy and the right of self-determination? And keep in mind the history of the Ukraine. The history of the Ukraine has always been a history in which they greeted and enjoyed and fostered fascism and racism. The Ukraine greeted the Nazis as liberators at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa in 1941. So we need to understand that this guy, Zelensky, and his crew and his mob are not fighting for no self-determination of Ukraine. They were about to vamp on the Donbass. They was about to vamp on Russian citizens and Russian-speaking Ukrainians and murder them. So, I think Sister Jacquie is correct. And I think that, though, given the fact that what you're trying to do, brother, is trying to forge a consensus in a united front that could redefine the political parameters of working people in America and get them to understand who their real enemies are, what capitalism really means for their future. If we're going to do that, we have to be very principled when it comes to a united front and coalition politics. And I know you're going to be painted into the corner on a lot of things, especially when it comes to supporting the Palestinians, when it comes to supporting the BDS movement, in which you were very instrumental in launching. And so I think that it's very important that a united front don't appeal to the neoliberal and neo-conservative consensus in America that has completely eliminated the left. There's no left in America anymore. There's no principled left in America that's fighting for working people, that's fighting for ordinary people, that's fighting for people of color and women and gender issues. Gender issues and intersectionality is being used to divide the united front, to use the technique of encapsulation of individual oppressions, segments of the oppressed people are put forward and used against other segments of the left. So I think, Cornel, you have a really a difficult way to go, but I appreciate the fact that you got the courage and the insight and in your respect the faith, spiritual faith, to try to even pursue this. And I just hope, that you do, like you said, we're gonna take it to the bus, you're gonna ride it to the end.
But Dhoruba, more than hope, you offered a prescription for the campaign.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, but ain't nobody gonna pay no attention to that. What I said is, if we're truly trying to, well, let me start with the Green Party. The Green Party has absolutely no boots on the ground in the Black community, none. Nobody. If you ask the average brother in the Black community, have they ever heard of the Green Party? They'll look at you like, well, does that mean the people are green, or they all wear green? They wouldn't know what you're talking about. But on the other hand, you yourself, given your long history of activism and trying to speak truth to power, you do have a significant degree of notoriety and respect, especially amongst organizers who are trying to make a difference. So I think it's very, very important that the issue of democratic fascism, the national police state, become a linchpin in your struggle to in this endeavor that you're embarking on. And by that I mean, it's a unique opportunity to define the true role of the police under capitalism, the true role of the police under has it evolved in post-industrial society, and especially after World War II, and how the United States has moved as a nation state towards a seemingly impossible paradigm of contradictions, namely democratic fascism. I think you're the only candidate that actually use the word fascism. I think you're one of the only candidates that actually use the word capitalism. So when we talk about institutions like the police, your campaign could provide the unique opportunity to define for working people the true role of law enforcement in a police state. And that is, they're armed agents of the state. And as armed agents of the state, they're not workers. And therefore, their union should be decertified and reconstituted to reflect their position as armed agents of the oligarchy. Now, decertification of the union, of course, we're not going to win that fight, but the educational process that it will allow other organizations and activists to come in with amicus briefs and stuff. It educates our people that what we need is community control of public safety. That what we need is to remove the ability of mayors to unilaterally appoint a police commissioner or a police director. That there should be a consensus of the community to vet professional law enforcement to determine who is the best suited to be their police chief, taking them forward. And that's just an administrative job, because we will be talking also about decentralization of public safety, which means to break up this hierarchy of unions and racism inside law enforcement, and therefore change the command and control structure of unions. When we tried to do this in 1968, to 69, I'm sorry, to bring a referendum in New York on community control of police, the unions fought back with a multi-million-dollar campaign to push civilian complaint review board as opposed to community control of police. And we have some civilian complaint review boards all over the United States today. They're toothless, they're useless, and they only serve the police and the police unions. Then secondly, and I would end with this one, the police union, as you know, in most of the urban areas, exercise more political clout on what happens in government, who gets elected, than the people in our community. The police unions. If you don't get an endorsement from the police union, your campaign is basically shot. You see, why is this? Because the police are acting like ordinary citizens and workers who have a right to vote, but they enjoy all of the panoply of extrajudicial, extra legal protections that are not even written in the law. You see, if you or I were arrested for shooting somebody, we don't have no 72-hour of grace where we don't have to talk to anybody or anything. That's not. We have to get a lawyer quick. You get arraigned, you're gonna get arraigned with a public defender. What's your position? What do you plead? Okay. So what I'm trying to say, when I said all this to say, to highlight the real nature of law enforcement, it would be great if you would take as your running mate the articulate, the principled, and the long-suffering political prisoner, Mumia Abu-Jamal. Now, I don't think that
That's nice.
that
That's nice. That's nice. That's very nice, y'all. I like that.
I think that's I think because what that would add to your campaign is the fact that you can brilliantly articulate the contradictions and the limitations of these contradictions, and how we perhaps, I don't necessarily agree, but how we perhaps to try to look at things with a little less animus, let's say. I think Mumia, given the fact that he's an excellent writer, he can articulate issues that both of y'all agree on. He could take some issues that you might not have to go all the way on, but he can, you see. And I think it will bring to a light the prison industrial complex too, because you'll have every prisoner in America rooting for you. You'll have every reformer and people who have families in prison rooting for you. And so I think that would be a very good symbolic.
So Dr. West, that's a lot. That's a lot been thrown at you.
Yeah, well, both of these
what you
powerful
think?
voices is so
Yes,
rich. Absolutely, so rich. Definitely. First time I get a chance to really have dialogue with Sister Jacquie and her powerful formulation, this brother Dhoruba, Lord have mercy. We going back to 1990, 30 something years ago, and he's still on fire, and he had the same fire at the end and still pushing me, because you had that formulation in democratic fascism then in 1990, you remember. And people didn't pick it up because it comes out of the repressive apparatus tied to slavery, Jim Crow, new Jim Crow, how it's constitutive of so-called U.S. democracy, but when it comes to the treatment of black folk, it's had this fascist public face, fascist policy, and fascist shaping, trying to convince us to be scared and intimidated and running around always fearing, always full of fear. But two quick points. One is that, now remember now, my two statements so far on NATO, though, that I've called for the banning of NATO. I've called for you can't dismantle the American empire without dismantling some of its major tentacles. And it has been a fundamental tentacle and was no longer needed, especially after especially after 1991, but even beginning in the 1940s. That's why I invoked Du Bois in the Twitter. You remember what Du Bois said in 1945? The next Third World War will be the suppression of Asia and the stranglehold of Russia by the United States and Europe. Well, you see, he wrote that leaving San Francisco after the founding of the United Nations. He already saw it. He already saw so we already have voices in our own rich tradition that's keeping track of the relationship between the U.S. militarism abroad, and then I mentioned the COP cities as the example of militarism here as just a kind of example among the whole structural and institutional reality of the COP cities, and they go on hand in hand. And the way in which Brother Martin Luther King always talked about that, right? The bombs dropped in Vietnam land in ghettos here, which is not just guns and butter, but it's the militarizing mentality that goes with an empire that wants to treat the black folk here in the militarized way, be it prisons, schools, streets, or whatever it is, and the enemies, as you said, and right now I think the enemies of the U.S. ruling class are Russia and China. You notice there's 15 references to the NATO formulation of China. And you say, well, wait, what's China doing? No, they already gearing up. They're already gearing up. Now, my dear sister Jacquie, on this issue of invasion, though, the reason why I still hold on to it at the moment, y'all forced me to rethink it, is that when you actually look at the response of the Ukrainian people, even given their Nazi elements and so forth and so on, they experience it as an invasion. You see, so that if we have to be able to, on the one hand, acknowledge that Ukraine used to be a part of the Russian Empire at that time, and Lenin had already talked about the self-determination of various autonomous republics, but still part of the Soviet Union as a whole. You see, but they still experienced it as an invasion, and for me, that has to have some weight. What do you think about that, Sister Jacquie?
I think it has no weight when the state that claims that they are invaded is actually the state that is run by a U.S. puppet government that was installed as the result of a coup that is a perpetual infiltration by the U.S. empire. Zelensky is a direct result of the coup from 2014. He is an now he's anti-Russian. When he was elected, he was like, look, we're all the same people, us in Russia. Let's all get along. And then the U.S. came in and said, no, that's not the line we want you to have, because that's not the line the other people that we have put in place had. So you can't have that line. So this is also the same government that has waged, I won't say a covert civil war against its own people, against Ukrainians who are of ethnic Russian descent since 2014. So how is the government that has bombed Ukrainian women, children, men, elderly folks for 8 years, killed over 15,000 of them with no accountability whatsoever by the international government, how are they all of a sudden able to claim, oh, we were invaded by evil Russia? No, Russia, and to be clear, and I'm going to stop right here, to be clear, this is not a defense of Vladimir Putin.
Right, no, I understand.
He probably is the devil incarnate for all I know. He's got there's a lot about him I don't like. But what I am clear on is that, number one, Putin actually didn't want to get involved in this conflict because he understood what it was. It was the Russian government that told him, you have to do something about the Ukrainians killing our people, and the West doing nothing about it. And they're about to use Ukraine to put weapons on our border from NATO. You have to do something. So if we understand that in the history of this country, what this government did in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Absolutely.
This is really merely.
And that's the point that I'm making in all my speeches. See, that if Russian missiles were in Mexico and Canada, they'd be blown to smithereens the same day. Because that's how empires behave. That's how gangsters who run empires behave in that sense. And therefore, I was viewing them doing what Putin would do. But my only challenge to you is this, though, that I would draw a distinction between everyday Ukrainians and the Ukrainian government. And I think that's true everywhere you go. You see that Ukrainian government puppet extended, it tied to certain kinds of sources, power sources. But everyday Ukrainians, the masses of Ukrainians also understand it as invasion, you see, given their relative break from the Soviet Union, given all the Nazi elements there, and given the 2014 vicious attack on Russian-speaking Ukrainians and so forth. So that's I'm just trying to brainstorm this. That's what's on my mind when I use that kind of language. But I don't want any false equivalency on the one hand, and I certainly don't want to downplay, for me, the intimate relation between foreign policy and domestic policy and militarism abroad and militarism at home as it connects to mass incarceration regimes, police brutality, police murder, violation of dignity of Black folk, and so forth.
So,
But I think could I just say I kind of agree with you that the Ukrainian people, all civilians, are the ultimate victims of war. And but I think that we have to understand that in the age of weaponized data, in the age of algorithms and mass communications, that information is intelligence. And so propaganda has a far more effect on people than we would think. The perpetuation of false ideas, false dialogues, false contradictions means that in the age of information, ignorance is no longer bliss. So how do we classify innocence when they get behind a fascist government? We could say the MAGA, the people who are backing Trump, who believe his lies, who believe that this man represents something positive in their lives. We could say that they're innocent, that they're ignorant. You know, I'm kind of torn between that and understanding that there is such a thing as people clinging to their nationalism in spite of knowing the realities of the situation. And all they need is a leader to articulate the most rabid aspects of their most jingoistic aspects of that nationalism, and they'll back them up, and they'll back her up or him up. And what do we say when the president's at war? That we really can't criticize him too tough, you see? So everybody got to get down with the war, don't say nothing, you see? So I kind of like hear what you're saying, but I kind of think that we are living in a global village in which being innocent is relative. And it's relative to how the expression of nationalism, which I believe in my heart is obsolete in this day and age. The idea of nation states. We are living in a global village. We are faced with threats to global humanity. And I don't think that we need to carry jingoism to its logical conclusion, because none of us will be around if we do that. So I hear what you're saying, that innocent Ukrainians and innocent Russians are the major victims of war. This is true of war all the time. But we have to be very, very clear that people are making choices today. And the MAGA right, for instance, they're making choices. Whether we think they're ignorant or stupid doesn't really matter, because you cannot underestimate the power of plenty of ignorant people. They have power. And all they need is a demagogue to articulate their deepest fears and beliefs. And before you know it, we're burning books, we're hanging people, we're prosecuting thought. And that's what's happening today. So I don't think that we should give the innocents in war more of a political let me say that I think that you are better positioned to talk about the innocent victims of war as a religious man, as someone who believes and has faith in humanity and values life. I think that's a very good.
God, now that's different than faith in humanity, now, brother. That's a different thing.
Well, humanity was created by God, so I got you.
Empowered, has
I'm just
tremendous
saying
possibilities and so forth, but it's not that I have a faith in humanity. No, we are wretched species in a lot of ways. We know that to be the case. We just got tremendous possibilities and wondrous potentiality. But I mean, I don't want to go on and on. But I just want to say,
I'm just saying, given
for raising these,
I'm just saying, I could understand. I'm just saying, Cornel, I could understand how you would or should, talk about the suffering of people in these senseless wars, that you should address that in these senseless wars.
Absolutely.
And that suffering is not justified or rationalized by ideology.
Right.
You see,
that's
what
right.
I meant.
That's right.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we know that leaders cannot lead unless they have people that believe in what they're saying or what they're doing, or if they're fearful enough to follow certain people who do not value the lives of their citizens and their people. These are what dictators are about. These are what fascists are about. They don't value our lives and our humanity. So that's what I wanted to say. I think that we really have to make a distinction between jingoism and people following a nationalistic leader that's leading them to hell, and people who are suffering as a consequence of that journey.
Absolutely.
So, brother Cornel, two things. One, I have a question, and two, I think I'm gonna volunteer to kind of moderate this convo so that we can kind of, get enough shots off, because we want to make sure that we know that we're limited with time. We want to make sure that we get as much in as possible. If that's cool with the panel, everybody cool with that, or?
Yeah.
No, that sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. So my question for you today is you mentioned Cop City. Today is the 8-year commemoration of the assassination of Sandra Bland. She was, of course, hanged inside of a jail cell in Texas. Since her murder, there's been close to 12,000 brothers and sisters around the United States that have been killed by cops. In mentioning Cop City, Dhoruba talked about, he also talked about decertifying the police unions. He talked about community control of public safety. And I want to kind of hone in on your thoughts of how would you deal with this in real time? I mean, I know that we can come with, we got the sound bites, we got the slogan in and all of that. But at the end of the day, in a practical way, what would be your solution? I know that one thing Dhoruba was talking about he was talking on the phone maybe about a few weeks ago, or maybe a few days ago rather. And he talked about a class action lawsuit against the police and against the police unions. What are your thoughts on that? And what would you have to offer in regards to reeling and reining in these murders?
I mean, I've always thought that community control is one of the proper starting points of any talk about policing. And the question becomes, what form of community control do we have in mind? What are the ways in which the community could feel as if those who are providing protection and service to them is an extension of our community? Now, just given that basic orientation, given that basic kind of political disposition, I can imagine a variety of different institutional forms. I don't think there's just one form, but that for me is the fundamental principle. So when Brother Dhoruba talks about decentralization, when he talks about oversight of everyday people vis-a-vis an autonomous police presence that is very much like a foreign army in the community. Well, see, that kind of community control I'm talking about forecloses that. It doesn't allow that kind of thing to catch on. So the class suit might be useful in terms of, again, casting a certain limelight and spotlight on the corruption and the racism of the police department and the culture of silence among the police and so forth. But in terms of a much more constructive way, it seems to me, there has to be ways in which resources can be brought to bear to generate forms of public safety. I give an example. I was just with Charles Barron a couple of years ago in East New York, and unfortunately, he just lost, but he's been my brother for 45 years. And he had in his community his own patrolling group. And it was a fascinating thing to see. And the crime was down. The crime was down. And you would think people who are concerned about better practices or best practices would have picked up on what Brother Charles Barron was doing, as you all know, city council brother and state assembly with Sister Inez, his magnificent freedom fighting wife. So there's examples out there that need to be lifted up, that are centered on community control in a substantive way, not community control in a kind of afterthought of oversight that has very little content and substance. That's usually what the so-called progressive orientation tries to do. So it really doesn't have that much power at all. It's just a kind of window dressing that allows the present forms of policing to stay in place. But that would be my starting point, though, brother. That would be my starting point, though. And I appreciate your message too, though, man.
I know.
Appreciate your message.
Dhoruba, real quick before Dhoruba, if you don't mind, real quick, if because I know, again, similar to what Kalonji was saying about running out of time. I know, Dr. West, are you saying you're out of here at 3 o'clock? Is that the time?
No, I go with.
Oh, we got time.
Though,
okay, my bad. I apologize.
We let it flow until I don't have another thing until it would be 12:30 my time. What is it? Is it 3 something?
I don't know. I don't know where you are.
About 3:30. California.
Well, sadly, I do have to leave. Sadly, I do have to leave. But thank you, Dr. West. Thank you, everybody, for having me spend a little bit of time with you today.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Jacquie.
You
Appreciate
strong in your work.
Be safe, Jack.
Right.
Be safe. Take care.
Dr. West, I think that what you talked about having substantive programs and projections for decentralization and community control of public safety. First of all, we have to define public safety not just as police, but also as community health care, public. Also the community being able to maintain a certain educational standard for our children, certain educational safety. But I think there are different things that we can do. We know like certain police departments require 2 years probationary period for new police. And, a 2-year probationary period. We could make that mandatory residence clause in the communities that they're policing. You see. Could talk about that would mean that the landlords in the city have to then provide accommodations for police and law enforcement who are living in the community. And that changes the whole profile of one block. If the cop living on that block comes from it has to practice his trade there. His daughter has to go to school down the street. So the gangbangers and the dope dealers got a whole different thing to deal with now. Because homeboy ain't just a father; he's a cop. You see, and he could bring the heat. You see, so I'm saying there's ways we got to think about this in terms of what our existential condition really is. We have to be able to project in a united front that for all intents and purposes, since the pushback against the civil rights gains of the 60s has been mass incarceration, that the pushback against the gains of the civil rights bill has been to get as many Black people in jail so that they can't vote. That we have to understand that the prison industrial complex was a consequence of the consolidation of white supremacy and right-wing politics after the successes of Dr. King and after the successes of the civil rights movement. This was a pushback, and it was pushed back to along with the state. That's what Nixon did. That's what he said he would do. So how do we deconstruct that in these times? I think that what you were saying, we have to have concrete mechanisms and institutions so that we could train in our community like Charles Barron did, so that we could train civil service, young people coming forward and taking on the task of securing the schoolyards, making sure that children are safe, all of these things. So community control of public safety, I think, brother, that you have to redefine what we mean by family, And a metaphor that I use is that we talk about the hood today, but when I grew up, it was the neighborhood. And they took the word neighbor out of hood. And when we had a neighbor
now hoods, because nobody's neighbors, just animals surviving with that animal behavior. Shout out to Dove and Daylight. Rest in peace. My bad. Sorry for that. Sorry.
Yeah, the new Cornel.
For a second. My bad.
That's right. That's right. Once we took the word neighbor out of hood, then mamas didn't feel safe sitting on the stoop. And I mean, I grew up in the South Bronx. And I tell you, Cornel, if I went 2 blocks away from my house and did some dumb stuff, my mama knew about it before I got home.
Oh, absolutely.
You see,
Absolutely.
that was neighborhood. When the number man came running through and throwing up his sign, letting us know what the lead figure was, that was the neighborhood. You see, so what I'm trying to say is, if we're going to organize a united front, we have to first admit that from the bullwhip days to today, African people went from being chattel slaves to surplus labor, and the venue for surplus labor, our surplus labor, was prisons, and that in our communities we do not control anything in our communities, so we're effectively a domestic colony. And although we're not producing mineral resources and all of that, what do we have in the Black community? Most Black workers got to leave the Black community to go to work. So we don't have jobs and industries in our community that's fortifying our working class. Black unions have been attacked and pushed down with unions all over. So, I mean, this went on since Reagan. So what I'm trying to say is, you're right. When we talk about community control of public safety, we have to have slogans that the enemy and the right wing cannot co-opt. And that's very important. That's why I was very critical of slogans like defund the police. What nation state is going to defund their armed agents? None of them. Okay, you could say, oh, well, they could put more money into this and more money into that. That ain't happening. If you got a police department that's getting almost $1 billion a year in new equipment and armaments and training and all of this, if they give $200,000 to have a psychologist ride along with a 911 call, what does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. So we're not talking about, as you pointed out, cosmetic changes here.
Right, that's right.
But before we can get people to understand where we're coming from, we have to get them to think that they have power, that this system is not something that they can't change, that we can do this. If we don't mourn, we organize. You see, we don't hate, we just get even. So,
Professor West, if we can, before you respond to any of that, CoCo, please, if you
I'm done. I just wanted to say I agree with that.
Much appreciated.
No, indeed.
No, right on.
Indeed.
Thanks. Yeah.
Brother West, it's really good to see you again.
It's
so I appreciate you being
to see
here.
you, my dear sister.
So obviously, you know, a lot has been spoken on today about, you know, community control, and, you know, my concerns mainly with, you know, politicians and the Black community and the lack of, you know, real reparation, right? Of, you know, thinking about the legacy, the history of enslavement here in the United States, and obviously imperialism. And so for the various New African Black communities here in, you know, the United States, you know, what are some programs that your campaign could potentially work on, right? That are a little bit more concrete, or actually just period concrete, right? That could, you know, support the actual repair, right, of, you know, Black communities who have this history right here in the United States. But like, you know, obviously with, you know, the liberal, I guess you can say, the liberal concession programs that have existed, such as affirmative action, you know, you have critical race theory and DEI, that, you know, didn't really stand a chance because of this bipartisan, you know, work that, you know, has to happen within Congress, and obviously the Supreme Court having a lot more say in these issues, right? And they actually don't represent the people. So what is your campaign actually going to focus on for African Black, New African people here in the United States that's actually going to bring concrete infrastructure programs, as you were saying, with, you know, these ideas of community control? Like what ideas are you striving to implement, right, as some tangible campaign programs that could be implemented within your campaign and potential presidency?
No, appreciate this. So good to see you again. Continue our conversation from last time. Very much so. But I look at it in a twofold way, though, my dear sister. I mean, one is looking at it from the vantage point of what Brother Dhoruba was talking about in terms of how he grew up. You see that a neighborhood was the ghetto that Donny Hathaway and Leroy Hudson was singing about. It was a place where there was self-respect and there was a sense of self-determination. We could see it in the way we walked. You could see it in our churches. You could see it in our sports. You can see it in our networks. You could see it in our neighborhoods. So that one of the things I want to do is to make sure that those forms of self-respect and self-determination and self-defense, and in many ways, you know, all the dialogues I have with my precious Black nationalist brothers and sisters who always use those three pillars, going all the way back to Baraka and Karanga and the others, to me, those are indispensable, going back to Garvey. So what forms could they take? Well, one would be, for example, that we learn something from the Black Panther Party and have resources for various forms of connection with each other. I think there ought to be even as we call for the end of mass incarceration, there ought to be a flow of Black folk back and forth to folk who are incarcerated to learn from the incarcerated to learn from them in process, in transition. That's what the Panther Party had. That's what I was blessed to work with for 3 years when I was in college at Norfolk State Prison where Malcolm was. Same would be true in terms of the forms of service, breakfast programs, all these different forms of service. It's got to be a renaissance of Black love and Black self-respect that go outside even of our citizenship. Now, I believe as citizens, we ought to have Medicare for all. That's everybody. As citizens, we ought to have quality housing. As citizens, we ought to have quality education. But there's always citizenship with a fundamental difference if you're Black or New World African. Because the afterlife of slavery, which is neo-slavery, Jim Crow, and crypto slavery today, and the new Jim Crow and so forth, that's always there as another dimension of our citizenship. Now, I don't want to downplay our citizenship because we paying taxes. And if you're paying taxes, then you ought to be able to have services based partly on your taxes, but also tied, as you know, reparations is also a crucial part of the program in terms of the repair, which is both financial, but also psychic and also spiritual. But I just want more what the old Black nationalists used to call robust forms of self-help and self-respect. And those are the kind of things that can take place in a variety of different forms, even as we speak, even as we move toward more fundamental change and fundamental social transformation, you see. Does that make sense, though? Does that make sense?
No, it actually makes really good sense. So, like, my follow-up question to you is, and from what I'm hearing, is that you potentially would support African self-determination, in which we have political power over our resources, our lands, right? We should have lands, right? And obviously we have, and not, be very narrow with this. I'm not, promoting any type of narrow nationalism or narrow reparations, but in forms that are transformative for African people. So would you be in support of that?
Oh, indeed. Well, I've had, thank God, this is on my third meeting. I have it today. After we finish, I'm meeting again with my Black farmers coming out of Tennessee and Mississippi and other places who actually have land. The same is true with, William Barber, the brother who was playing such an important role building on Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, the Poor People's Campaign, that I worked with his son, William Barber IV, who has 175 acres in North Carolina that they use as the basis of not just ownership, but self-determination, various kinds of institutions and infrastructures. Now, it may be small compared to the whole U.S. imperial continent, but it's part of the tradition of Black self-help and Black self-respect that takes the form of ownership of land and the production of products on that land. And it's been carried on from one generation to the next in the Barber family. But that's just another small example. But I use that because I'm blessed to be on their board, and we meet every 2.5 months or so. And this is Barbara's son, who's just probably about 31, 32 years old, put this together about 3 years ago. But these are other examples of on the ground, grassroots, very concrete efforts at not just Black self-determination, but Black self-respect, Black self-love. Now, I always fall back on, even when Brother Dhoruba said we don't own anything, well, we own our voices. Can't nobody sing like Jahim. That we own the way we walk, we own the way we talk, we own the way we touch our children, we own the way we could shape our children and love our children. Those are in the interstices of a vicious capitalist economy and white supremacist society, but we own, and that's why again the music becomes so central.
So
and even the church life, which is basically Black music incarnate, whether you believe theologically or not, you resonate because it's a sense of home for New World Africans in that church. You don't even have to believe in the dogma, but let James Cleveland sing a song and he gonna take you to a place that you like yourself and you love yourself. Well, see, that's part of Black self-determination too. And we have to acknowledge that and use that as a source of our people as we feel so beat down and as we feel as if, as you know, Afro-pessimism is so popular these days among the professional managerial academy. You see,
beyond that, hold up there, Dr. West. It's popular beyond that, and that's why so many people got a problem with it, and they don't understand it.
Just talking about the books. Just talking about the books.
All right, okay,
all
right.
So brother number one.
You're right.
Quick question. So, brother number one, we got the Donny Hathaway, we got all that, and my thing is this right here. Let's say for some strange reason, by the grace of white Jesus, that you don't end up president. I want to know post-election, right? What are we talking about after this? Because it seems like this is a excellent organizing opportunity. We hear you talking about working with the Black farmers. You on a platform like Black Power Media. You came through. This has been your third time in a row, and we appreciate you coming through for sure because of the fact that when you come through, you bring your soul, and that's cool, right? But I need to know because we like to organize, quote unquote, after the revolution, right?
Yes.
Folks talking about what's going to happen, and we talking about a whole lot of hopes and dreams right now. Like if you become president, and more the words. I'm gonna take one of your things. If it was a spliff, we'd be all messed up, right? So I need to know for you, with this momentum that we're talking about gaining and gathering, right? Where do we go organizationally from here? Are there any organizations you looking to support? Are there any organizations you looking to start? We know that you can only go so far. We respect what you do and how you do it. But at this stage in the game, we gotta snap back to reality and say, okay, boom. What we eating after this? You know what I'm saying? How we gonna feed babies? How we gonna survive America? So I'm just curious, from that angle, because everything else is good, but it don't really lock it in. Because like I said, if it's a loss, then all of this talk and everything is great for
well, I think the important thing is that you always try to tell the people the truth. You claim no easy victories. You tell them that any campaign, including this campaign, or any individual, including any of us, are just moments in a larger movement. It's got to be domestic as well as international. And that there can be no serious breakthroughs if the movement is weak. This was true. The last politician who talked that way in many ways was Harold Washington when he won in Chicago. He said, look, y'all dismantle the movement. I'm up here with the city council. They're going to cut my neck off. The movement was stronger after he was elected than before. That allowed him to do the things he could do. And that's true for any politician. One of the problems these days for most politicians of all colors, but especially our Black politicians, is they're afraid of the movement.
Well, I'm glad you said that.
They make their moves, you see, because they get devoured by the system and they're no longer organically connected to the movement. So the question becomes, how does a candidate, even when they win or lose, try to enable and empower the larger movement of which they're just a wave in a larger ocean? Well, one of the ways you do that, back to Dhoruba's point again, when I talked about first acknowledging, because I'm very tied to paying debts, acknowledging those who sacrifice. So we already talked about this before in terms of the pardon. Now we talk about Brother Mumia running for president or vice president. I could be his VP, actually. That you talk about pardons across the board, bringing them in and acknowledging the role that they have played and how they are part and parcel of the same tradition of which I am an extension. That the kind of conversation that we having right now would take place in another context, not necessarily in the White House, because I said I ain't going into the White House to everybody have a house. But I mean, that's just for me, just what it is to be a servant of the people. But the kind of conversation we'd have, we would be having it in sites of power. Meaning what? Meaning that there'd be a whole host of different ideas, visions, concerns about institutions and infrastructures you all know about that could be sources of resources, given the kind of resources I'd have available to me. That's my role. That's what it is to be a servant.
If I could jump in there, you just touched on a good point when you talk about Black elected officials, because we have a Black misleadership class that is so outrageous that we have Africans being dumped in the middle of the Sahara Desert by racist Tunisian regime, and not one Black person in the Black caucus mentions U.S. policy in their relationship to this. But to be more practical, when we're talking about you running for office, I think one of the things we need to talk about is making sure that felons can vote, that voting could extend inside the prison industrial complex. You know why? Because when the census is taken, in order to judge what district gets whatever resources and how people can vote, the census do not count family members who are in prisons, usually in upstate rural white communities. In fact, they're counted in the rural white communities as part of that population. So for instance, all of the Black men in Attica are not counted as members of the community or of the families from which they come from, which is predominantly New York City. 70%, over 78% of all the prisoners in New York State come from New York City, Buffalo, and the major urban areas. But when the census comes around to count people and or portion districts, the family says, well, how many people are living here? They say, well, 3. But 2 of them might be in upstate New York. They're not counted. Then the family is instructed, they're not counted. I think one of the things that we should begin to do is to say that people who have committed or have went astray of the law, that they need to be able to reintegrate themselves back into the community, and they should have the right to vote. I think that if you put on your program that prisoners and felons should vote, they will not vote for the Democratic Party. Trust me on that. So
if I can,
what we're going to do afterwards, the purpose to me for running in this race is to raise the consciousness of people so that we could form a third political party, so that we could establish a third political party that represents true working class people, that is led by the most egregiously oppressed people, and I think that's the end game that Kalonji was trying to find out. What we're going to do, when it's all over.
So
we got to dance right now with no step.
So some would be asking to that last point about the building of a third party. Some would be, I think, rightfully raising an eyebrow around the fact that you are currently running on the ticket or not for the nomination of an alternative party. And some are also wondering about your still confused, in some cases, affiliation with the Green Party, with your confused affiliation with the People's Party that still seems to have a connection to you while they're dealing with all kinds of stuff, including alleged abuses and mistreatment and all kinds of stuff. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, particularly after a conversation we just had recently with members of the Green Party Black Caucus and volunteers with the Green Party, is to what extent do you see yourself building the Green Party as a potential, maybe for what Dhoruba and Kalonji are talking about, or just beyond something else? So that would be one question that I would want to just add on to what has already been raised there.
Right. No, and that's a powerful question, because I know so little about the Green Party. You know what I mean? It's like singing in the Apollo for 4 years, and they ask you to sing on the East Side, and you go over there and sing your song the same way you sing at the Apollo, but you don't really know that new venue that well. You know what I mean? Because I ain't spent a whole lot of time in the Green Party at all. They just happen to be out there, and I'm blowing my horn, and somebody asked me to come on in and play some songs for them. So that I want to be, honest with them in terms of acknowledging I'm not really an organic part of it at all. I mean, I remember being in Philadelphia in 1980 with NBIT, the National Black Independent Political Party, with all of. Now, see, that's where your heart and soul is. That's where the Apollo is. That's where the real culture is. But we couldn't sustain it. But that memory and that element is a fundamental part of me, even though I'm in the Green Party. And so it would be a question of, how do you talk about a united front? How do you talk about a broad collection of different organizations and institutions in such a way that you try to be true to yourself? Principle. I got to be true to myself in terms of, who I am and my own priorities on chocolate sides of the empire, on chocolate sides of community, on chocolate sides of the culture. That's just who I am. You know what I mean? They're the ones who invited me in.
But at the same time,
other parties would have to play a very important role. Other institutions
Cornel,
would have to play
the Green Party. The Green Party in Europe. I just came back from a tour in Europe. The Green Party in Europe has become a shadow of what it initially started out as.
They pro-war. They pro-war now.
They pro-war.
Oh,
They pro-Zionist. The only thing
Absolutely.
I think the Green Party might have a handle on is the environments a little bit.
That's right.
But I think the principle is the only thing that's going to sustain you, Cornel. Right. Is that I think you need to go read Mao's United Front, towards building a united front.
I got to take a look at it, like I read the Pendleton 2. Y'all told me to check out on the Pendleton 2 in Indiana.
I'm telling you, because the Green Party could be a dance that don't have could be a song that don't have no steps. Could be a dance without no steps. And I'm not trying to knock them. I'm not trying to make them look like, they're on the same side of the barricade as Donald Trump and the right and everything. Right. But I'm saying that I understand how expedience in this particular sense is necessary in these troubled times, and that's why I said you should read Miles on the United Front, because he unified with the Kuomintang. Hey, the Kuomintang. Descendants on Taiwan. You see, now if he could unify with the Kuomintang, we could make some considerations.
No, I hear you. I hear it. I'm gonna go back and take a look at that. I'm gonna go back and take a look at it, though. No, I hear
he unified.
But part of it is too is that, see, we as the jazz people, though, we know how to improvise without being grassly opportunistic. If you're opportunistic, you're not improvising at all. You're just narrowly scared and careerist. That's a different thing. But if you're improvisational in terms of knowing how to move in and out of different contexts and preserve your sense of calling and integrity and sensitivity to the suffering, then you're able to have a better chance of thriving and surviving. And that's the history of Black people in the modern world, it seems to me.
Can I just have, for me personally, there's one more question I'd like to ask just real quick, somewhat addressed a little bit last time, but I did just come back from the Summer Institute of the American Association of University Professors this past week. And given what, could be perceived perhaps as a partial kind of allegiance of some of kind with DeSantis and his crew over the classics and standardized testing. What would your administration, given the soon-to-be victory, what would your administration do to protect an eroding academic environment, in particular the erosion of faculty shared governance, academic or intellectual freedom? I believe I've read a word or two about your own experiences with those struggles. But there is a big concern. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. One is that we would have to have free education, easy access with teachers paid at much higher salaries, and the connection of teachers with the community too. You see, I don't like these narrowly academic institutions that end up creating these silos and bubbles that have no connection or a little connection to the larger community of which they're a part. You see, and so it's a matter of priority. We're talking about resources again. And because, I'm talking about massive redistribution of trillions of dollars from the military industrial complex to people's basic social needs. That's the only way you can proceed. The empire has got to be dismantled for those sly stone called everyday people to flower and flourish in every domain of their life, every dimension, and education is a crucial one in that regard.
Well, how do you
but I would still always talk about excellence. You see, that I think that one of the reasons why Black people have survived is because we have been courageous in the face of being taught to be fearful, and we believed in excellence. We believe in the best. The best. Curtis Mayfield's different than me in singing. He's better because that's his gift, and he used his gift to the highest level. Toni Morrison can write stories I can't never write. That's what excellence is. That's what classics are. That's why Coltrane's a classic and Ella Fitzgerald's a classic in that sense. They are the best at what they do in light of the gifts that they have been given, and they give those gifts back to the people to empower them so that they can use whatever gifts they have. And so when I think about classics, be it text, be it music, be it ways of life, be it exemplary figures or what have you, Malcolm is one of the best precisely because he loved us more than most of us love each other. He needs to be lifted up. He's willing to sacrifice. He's the best. He's the freest.
So
even there, it gets tough because, I always raise myself the question, what was it about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he produced two of the freest Black people in the 20th century, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X? Elijah had something going on. I don't know what it was, but we just talk about the classics.
So you mentioned
Brooks. We got great, and so I don't give up this notion of greatness at all.
So how do you define
mediocrity and cowardliness and complacency and conformity are not what we need. It never has been what we need as a people. You see that? So when I talk about classics, it's always this transnational, trans-civilizational, transgender, transracial conceptions of the best. That's why we still read Mao. Mao got something to teach us. I got my critiques of Mao, everybody know that. But he got a lot to teach us. He was one of the best revolutionaries in what he was able to do. We got to learn from Cabral. We can go on and on. Assata Shakur and so forth and so forth. But that's what I'd have in mind in terms of a broader conception of education as it relates to resources, both material and financial, but also spiritual and cultural, you see.
So you mentioned defunding the military a couple different times, and I'm confused because I'm really trying to figure out how realistic is it to defund a war machine. I mean, this is, that's the nature of the game: domination, imperialism, destruction. If they're not looking to defund the domestic, armed agents, as Dhoruba talked about, how is it possible for us to defund these militaries. I mean, it's military that, you know, with damn near 1,000 bases around the country and give the money back to the people. How is that possible? Is that like a utopian type dream, or I mean, help me understand. You know, I'm confused with that.
I mean, one of the things about the executive branch is that, given the imperial presidency, that there's tremendous power in the executive branch as it relates to being commander in chief. And it means then that you can use both bully pulpit, but you can also use your power, executive order and so forth, for bringing troops back home, shutting down bases. We got 800 bases around the world. Using the monies, not just for the military. We got to keep in mind, you know, there's about $1.5 trillion that's used in Homeland Security as well as State Department that aren't even part of the military budget, but they have militaristic ends and aims. And first, you just educate the people, because you have to have the people behind you. You have to educate the people about what it is. Most people in America don't even know. They don't know that 56 cents for every $1 goes to the military. So you get austerity for social needs, but you get boundless resources for military. People just don't need, most people don't even know that. And if in fact we were able to create an atmosphere where they were willing to say, yes, let's start closing these bases. Let's bring these troops home. We could be a social experiment among social experiments rather than an empire that's subordinating chauvinistic nations. It's a different vision. It's a different way of conceiving of the arrangement of the globe. Now, it is utopian, ain't no doubt about that. It is utopian. But it was utopian for great-great-great-great-great-grandmama and them to conceive of barbaric white supremacist slavery being over.
Well, I think
chance at all.
I think, Cornel, you're gonna have a problem with the military. You're gonna
it's gonna be a problem
because capitalism relies on war and the threat of war. That's what it's about. The United States, I think, hasn't been at peace without a war in 33 years or 43 years of its entire existence. You see, so capitalism and America and war are almost synonymous.
Oh no, that's real.
But you are pointing out that as commander in chief, you can one can rearrange a chessboard, so to speak, that more benefits would be coming home. I think the key to that, though, Cornel, I think the biggest message you could bring to all of those Black elected officials who will try to undermine your campaign, who will try to say your campaign is wasting votes, wasting energy. I think we need to understand that the problem with Black elected officials, when they came out of being activists after the war on poverty and the creation of the CBC, when we were burning cities down, and LBJ came up with the war on poverty in order to give us an investment. And we came out with Black capitalism and Black on Black crime in order to keep our spots going, poverty pimps to keep their thing going. But the thing that resonates is that if we ran for political office with the intention of not to get reelected, but to tear down the edifice in that one term of those essential institutions and structures that inhibit growth, we'd be like Humpty Dumpty. You don't have to. They would have a hard time trying to put it back together again if you're not in office. You see, and I think problem is that as elected officials, once we get into office, we want to stay there. We want to finish what we started. Then we start fronting like we're doing it for the people. And then before you know it, we on the grift. You see,
that's true.
We should run for political office for the sole purpose of making it so difficult for whoever comes next to reestablish the type of institution that oppressed our people, that put you in office. And I think that's the lesson we need.
That says it, brother. That says it much more eloquently than I could. That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's partly putting a wrench in the wheel as opposed to just being a cog in the machine. Most of our politicians are just cogs in the war machine. They cogs in the money-making machine. They cogs in the status granting machine. You see, they don't, but they scared. It's a spiritual dimension of this thing. You see, part of it is that most of the courageous freedom fighters were either killed or incarcerated, the soldiers. And those who were left were the difference between Andy Young and Fannie Lou Hamer. Now, I love both of them. I'm a Christian. I try to love everybody, shit. But
Come on, man.
Andy Young versus Fannie Lou Hamer is like,
Andy Young, come on. Ain't nobody love him but his mom.
In the junior high school choir, you see that Andy's so usable. He's manipulable. And Martin and them knew that because he had his high moment and it was over. And he was ready for becoming the cog in the machine. Whereas Fannie Lou ain't going, Martin ain't going for that. It's a different spiritual, but you like that too, Dhoruba. You the same way, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I ain't on the possession of black office, man. I'm ass out south of the Sahara on the eve of Armageddon, bro. So,
but I can tell you this, though. Even if I dream, it's like the freedom dreams of the Commodores with Zoom, right? That is freedom dream. That what Robin Kelly would call freedom dream. That the dream of us being able to have this conversation every 2 weeks in the White House with access to resources and power is something that goes hand in hand with
we definitely dreaming out of season. We definitely dreaming out of season.
White House might be the big house.
Bringing Sister CoCo, Sister Jacquie.
That's right. It might be the big house.
Coming in to reflect on the situation of the people. Now,
so who gonna do your security during your campaign? The FOI?
You have to look like the president going too far. But hey, we got a right to dream. That's part of our tradition too.
But listen, Cornel, who gonna do your security during your campaign? The FOI?
Brother,
I know you ain't trusting the Secret Service because you're trying to put them out of a job.
No, it's true. No, the security is intense, though, man. I'm in the house now with all kind of things. Because especially with the NATO stuff coming out, and now I'm Putin's puppet and all this kind of mess.
Sure.
You walk around street, people coming at you too forward. But I've had a lot of that before, but not as intense. And it's going to get much, much more intense. But on a certain level, you just say, hey, bring it on. You know what I mean? That's all y'all can do is talk bad and generate some arrows and some bullets. Please. If that's all you got.
Money don't get no money.
Then
that's true.
I mean, we have July 15th, we're having this the 10th anniversary of Black Lives Matter here in Los Angeles. And that's going to be an interesting moment right there. They've asked me to say some words. He said, oh, Lord.
look at
that. Lord, have mercy.
Brother West, just remember, this is a class struggle. Just remember, this is a class struggle.
But you know what I got to say about hashtag movements, man. Don't start.
Absolutely. This is a class struggle with the class war against us. But the white supremacist and male supremacist dimensions of it still very real. You know what I mean?
But Dr. West, I just want to confirm that I heard you correctly, that you were confirming that on the 27th of July, you'll be back here at 2 p.m. Eastern once again. Is that we're going to maintain this 2 week protocol?
And how's it going, Dr. West?
I thought we were
the 7th.
The 27th is 2 weeks from today.
I'm writing that down right now. At the same time, 11 o'clock, LA time.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Last time you said you had a doctor.
I told you all that I'm going to Mississippi for the kickoff for Emmett Till Day with the Emmett Till family in Jackson, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. I think we talked about that last time, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, I remember that. Yeah.
No, because that's going to be the right place to go. 2 miles.
And you're going to be out there. You're going to be out there connecting with locals and with all of the issues that are happening with Mississippi too, right?
Is that brothers, Jackson,
Brother Jenkins and Brother Parker?
Okay.
Who've just been, brutalized so viciously by the police down there, and they have a beautiful united front of the black leadership. I can be a New Hope Baptist Church. I could be in a bit Pew. I could be with the with the local activists who've been very, very strong there. We just did a thing with Carl Nelson out of Baltimore, a big 2-hour show on that. But it's a way of just letting folk know, like, this is from whence I come, this is where I'm coming from, and this is where I'm headed. That's the blues town. That's Delta, Mississippi. That's Son House and Robert Johnson. Hellhound on my trail.
So we need to give you a show on Black Power Media since you've been a regular. You know, we give you a music show, call it Cornel West and the Blues.
Yeah, y'all inspired me. You inspired and struck me in serious ways. I know I got this thing at 12:30, but I'm giving y'all a hug and I'll see you again on that.
Yes, sir.
Thursday.
Yes, sir. We'll be in touch.
Love y'all.
Thank you,
It was
Dr.
good.
West. Appreciate
Good
you.
talking
Take
to
care
you.
of yourself.
Appreciate you,
Dhoruba,
man.
man,
Take care of
it's just a
yourself.
joy to set eyes on you, man.
Take care of yourself, bro.
God,
Don't have to make me do a rerun now. Don't have to make me get the old comrades out of retirement. Take care of yourself.
Didn't we
bro.
run into each other in Ghana?
Nah, man, you know these Boule Negroes ain't go. Listen, I don't even have nothing to do with the black folks here in Ghana from the States, man, because they fronting. They ain't got
Wow.
African politics.
Lord. You told me you were going over.
I live here.
Oh, you there right now?
Yeah, that's where I'm from now. Yeah.
You told me you were going, because I thought I ran into you and we were there back in like 2003, 2004. We were together there.
I was there. Yeah, I was here then.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I've been here since '93.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lord, I thought you made your way back, man. You still there?
Man, I ain't coming back to Babylon, man.
No.
I might come back to help you, but I ain't coming back. And that's going to only be for 3 weeks.
Lord. Shoot, brother, when I'm running things, man, you come back anytime you want without a passport, god dang it. You don't even have to worry.
So that's how they took us out of here without a passport. They took us out of here without a passport.
Oh, Lord. But you got Du Bois's remains right there though still, right?
Yeah, the Du Bois, but you'd be surprised, man. It's sad how the Du Bois Center is not even a hub for any type of positive Pan-African activity, and that's it's really sad. But they just redid the Kwame Nkrumah mausoleum, and the NPP, which is the party of Mr. Potato Head and his crew. These people are the ones that collaborated, their families and that collaborated with the CIA, collaborated with the enemies of Nkrumah. So we've had that type of political disposition, but they rebuilt the center, and I think, yeah, they rebuilt. I think that's a tribute because of the Day of Return brought millions of dollars from the African diaspora right here to Ghana.
Okay.
Day of Return.
Okay.
But it was used by the political elite to smooth with the Harveys and the Roland Martins and the Boyce Watkins and all of these individuals, talk about how could they start businesses here and bring money here, and they gave them dual citizenship and all of that. Yeah, I mean, but we was fighting for dual citizenship since I first came here, and we didn't get it until recently. And that's when they found out that they could pimp our emotional and psychological ties to Africa. Because when we come back here, we hugging palm trees and kissing the ground, and we glad to be back home and don't have to deal with these crackers. So they know that that's valuable. That translates into tourist dollars. That translates.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. Lord. All right, but I'm gonna run this next day. But thank you so much, brother Jared, sister CoCo.
Hey, take care of yourself, Dr. West. Talk to you in a couple
Take
weeks.
care.
Be safe out there.
All
Take
right.
care of yourself, brother.
Well, all right, good people. Shout out to Dr. West. We wish him the best and going forward. What's everybody's time like? We got time for a post West discussion. What's the time like? Where's Renee at?
I got some time.
I got a few minutes. I got another interview scheduled.
Oh, for real? On here?
No, I'm gonna be on the other side of the mic with
okay.
What's that? Breakthrough news.
Breakthrough News, right on,
Yeah,
right on.
yeah,
You talking about Tulu? Yeah.
yeah.
Right on, right on. Shout out to Breakthrough News.
No doubt.
Any thoughts? Anybody got any? It was. Shout out to Ajamu Baraka. It's a little difficult to moderate. I don't know how we supposed to moderate all that right there, but I think. Anyway, what you all think?
I think it was a pleasant surprise. My third cousin removed, Dhoruba. I didn't know he was coming through, so I'm glad to see that, brother. He don't call me no more. You know what I'm saying? But
Here we go.
I'm glad to see you in the building today, brother.
Displacement.
They got you off the beach today, so that's cool.
You know what time it is now, man? It's pitch black outside. It's like, what time is it? I'm supposed to. Yeah, man. It's
10:30 or so, right? 10:30,
yeah,
11:30, something like that.
7:36.
7:36.
7:30.
You good, man. You got time. But I think it was good to dialogue. I think that the questions that you all asked were on point. I'm glad that Jacquie came through as well. And I think.
See, I love the competing comments. You all see that?
One said that they think he was too philosophical,
and the other one says the best one he done ever. I love it.
I think both of them are true, but we need to understand the role of philosophy in social change. There has not been any social changes in modern times in post-industrial society that didn't have a philosophical basis.
Yeah.
And so we might call it ideological basis, but what is ideology but a philosophical or a set of particular ideas and things. So I think both of them, Cornel does tend to be that way because he's somewhat of a historian. And most historians tend to recount things in long philosophical diatribes, but at the same time, I did appreciate his candor. I think he was very candid. I think when I think he really considered some of the things the sister was saying and some of the things that we brought to him. Now, how much that would resonate, how much he could do with that is a whole nother question.
While we have you on here, Dhoruba, I know you two have a long relationship, or I don't know what you call it, friendship, acquaintance, or whatever. I wanted to ask you because one of the things that we didn't really get into was with Cornel was this whole new age imperialism, right? And how things have changed over the past several decades. So if you don't mind, since we got you on here, this would be a nugget. What does imperialism look like today? And how do you see an election, a Cornel West dealing with this new brand of imperialism? Because of the fact that a lot of people, as we was talking the other day, they're still stuck on Cold War imperialism. What does this look like to you, and how do you think that Cornel would grapple against what's out there right now?
I think there's a qualitative difference between old age imperialism, the imperialism that many of us grew up, neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism that we grew up under, precisely because of the advancement in technology, the advancement in artificial intelligence and communications. They've changed the whole playing field. So globalization is really new age imperialism. And that's what I meant. Globalization has created raw material, nations that are committed or locked into producing raw material, and other nations that transform that raw material into products and resell them back to the rest of the world. Globalization is also about finance capital's control over economies, the system of finance capitalism that functions off of data and artificial intelligence. So New Age imperialism, when you go on the music stations, they have that New Age music, where you can listen to the flutes and all of that stuff and hear nature, and they call it New Age, meditation music. That is what I meant when I said New Age imperialism. It's not the imperialism of old, where armies had to occupy the territory, where the imperial power had to establish its own control of the microeconomy and move everything that way. They had to have a comprador class. New Age imperialism is much more sophisticated than that. If we look at Africa today, it's a classic example of how New Age imperialism has created a whole paradigm of relationships that mutually neutralize each other. That, for instance, the French, who are vested in creating a currency and maintaining that currency in Francophone Africa, are now running up against a whole new generation of resistance. That they no longer look at the French or the occupiers or their political elites as having control or a right to control their nation. And so New Age imperialism is what we're seeing today. The U.S. hegemony, interference around the world, setting up puppet states, creating forces, military forces in extra-legal military forces like ISIS, like these various bogus movements. We see what's happening in the Sudan. We see two knuckleheads, one supported by Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Used to be the head of jet, used to be in connection. His source of militarism was the Janjaweed from the Darfur genocide that we are familiar with. The other one is being supported by the old colonial powers. You see, so Africa is the victim, and I'm concentrating on Africa because that's our homeland. That's where we come from. I'm saying Africa is the victim of this new type of imperialism, this balkanization of Africans to the point where we have different sub alliances like ECOWAS, SADC, that were ostensibly set up to encourage trade between African nations, but instead are separately exploited by different former colonial nations, like the French or the British, and things like that. So New Age imperialism is the type of imperialism where the political elite, the economic elite, that used to compete with each other on the global stage, are now unified with each other in terms of maintaining their access to resources and their control over certain regions. That's what we see with NATO. That's what we see with other alliances that the U.S. has entered into, military alliances with Japan, with South Korea. People really don't understand why South Korea views the United States why North Korea views the United States the way it does. If they go back and look at the Korean War, they'll see that the United States literally bombed North Korea into the Stone Age, literally flattened the whole country. So this is why the Koreans are very paranoid about military exercises near their borders, near their country, because they believe the United States will do that to them again if given the chance. So
listen,
when we
I'm rolling out. I got to roll. I appreciate your piece. Y'all be safe out there. And till next time.
All right, peace.
Adios, amigos, man.
Peace, Kalonji. Be safe. Renee, welcome. Wanted to definitely get you into the conversation and ask you and CoCo. Sounds like you in a work you at work in the work environment, but
I'm in
yeah, go ahead.
the machine's going in the background, so I'll stay
That's
on
all
mute
good.
when I'm not talking.
No, it's all good. I just wanted to but anyway, welcome, and you know, what did you think? CoCo, same thing. What did you both think of the conversation?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I think that this is an early stage for Dr. West to really ground. I think I keep saying this, to really ground and root what he's actually campaigning for and who he's campaigning with. I still feel like there's a major opportunity there for him. I think at this stage, some of the questions are not real. I guess there's not really any concrete answers that are coming out of some of the questions that we're actually asking. But not to say, that's not happening elsewhere with other questions that are being asked. But I feel like from a, revolutionary nationalist perspective, I might see things different when it comes down to the class struggle than I think what he's speaking on. I think sometimes he'll say self-determination, but then he's still for private, land ownership. So like there's there's some contradictions, major and minor. And I think I've heard him speak on, workers in Africa and, defeating the petty bourgeoisie, defeating, the various class structures that are in Africa. So I'm curious to know what his ideas on defeating class structures here in the United States are. What does that look like? Again, going back to reparations, going back to, land and independence, what power, like how does he look at power, right? And like, where's his views on power? And, because I think he gets words, he puts the rhetoric out there, but I think that there's a confusion. And so I'm curious about some of that, but I think it'll develop over time.
Yeah, right on. Renee, you want to jump in? What you think?
I'm having such a hard time following his answers. And so I'm still like, I get lost midway and I'm trying to figure out, like, is it just me that's like lost in the word sauce or what? So I feel like y'all are trying to give him really good questions and y'all are trying to like draw out clarification on a lot of things. And I know it's just his way to speak in poetry and, the whole thing, but it's so hard to follow. And I just don't know how that's going to work. Like when he's talking to the regular, if he gets the opportunity to talk to like a full group of people and he does that, half the room is going to be like, what's happening right now? And I'm just not really sure. I don't know how this is going to work if he can't find a way to be very concise and clear and direct and his language is not precise enough to guide people who don't understand where he's going. And I just don't know how that's going to work, like grand scheme. He needs more people around him that are going to help him manage communicating, because it's hard. It's painful, man. I say that from a place of deep respect as you can for someone who is as like educated and versed and who knows so much and he has so much information. But every time I listen to him answer a question, I'm like, did he answer the question? Like, did he get to the cusp of what, like, you know what I mean? Like you asked him about the Green Party and he did a whole thing. And all I really got from it was that he's not really part of the Green Party.
Yeah, that was a wild answer.
The Green Party. So I'm like,
I think that was an honest answer. I think
it's very honest. Yes.
But I would like
to. I think, sister,
go ahead.
I don't know if you ever been to any events with Cornel, where Cornel spoke at, and he has an amazing ability to talk in ways that the audience, whatever particular audience he's in front of, can understand what he's saying. The problem that you're addressing, and I hear you, is that he tries to he talks in historical and metaphorical terms sometimes. And if you don't understand the historical continuum that he's talking about, if you're totally unfamiliar with it, then when he comes to the conclusion, you know, you'd be like, what did he just say? You see, and I get that, you know, and you're right. He needs to be he needs to have someone to say, yo, man, you know, put that in a different term, or, you know, what's the principle here, you know, and but once he gets that, he's pretty good at it. You know, he got a lot of that Baptist minister in him too.
But see, but Dhoruba, what I would, but to similar to Renee's point, as I understand at least, what I would have liked to hear him have more to say than I don't know anything about the Green Party, and I'm just sort of, in other words, to address both my question the way I was hoping it would be received, and it was a little bit difficult, you know, the setup with, you know, this many people involved and his responses. It's kind of hard to have the back and forth. I think that would be necessary in some cases with some of the questions, but what I would have liked to have him be able to say more would be to what extent, if he has a vision for this, to what extent does your point about Dhoruba building another party overlap with what could be or should be West's vision for doing something within the Green Party? In other words, I would have liked him be able to say, like, I want the Green Party to become this.
Well, I think it was good that he didn't say that, and it indicated to me that, you know, he was going to save the last dance for somebody else. You know, and that the Green Party, and you got to remember what I told you, Jared, that I think we was talking in a private conversation, and I said to you, although I understand Cornel's quote limitations in terms of how we can really deal with class struggle, because we do have black enemies of black people. And Cornel is on some love everybody, and, you know, we all brothers and sisters in this, and we should all get together and sing, you know, political kumbaya, you know, but I ain't with all of that shit. But you have black enemies of black people, and it's very difficult for a man of his background and the way he's been presenting class struggle, and he's been very clear in the oligarchic nature of white supremacy and American capitalism and the black bourgeoisie. He doesn't really avoid those things in order to get these Negroes in the CBC to love him. They're never going to care about him because he's not a real proto-capitalist like they are. So, but what you said about the Green Party, I think Kalonji said it too. What's at the end of this road? You see, and I'm saying, I think that given what's happening outside of the black community, internationally and nationally, that by the time we get to that end of that road, you know, it's going to be clear, even if we have a large third party, that the Green Party might be used as an entree into a lot of referendums and things that we can do. My thinking is that coalitions and alliances are that's what should back his campaign, as opposed to people actually joining the Green Party. So if we have black folks, like the sister was talking about, she needed clarity on reparations, and we're talking about community control of public safety and all of these things. So we need those organizations to have a coalition where we could quid pro quo say that, look, if we in this particular city blow up this ballot and make it popular and bring our people to the fore, we'll organize in the community, and we'll organize in the community behind Cornel. But we're not organizing the community for people to join the Green Party. You see what I'm saying? Here's
my question though. No, it's all right.
Read Mao Zedong in the United Front, because when you read that, Mao Zedong and the United Front was formed by a whole series of alliances of people who are anti-landlord, people who are fighting armed rebel bandits, the Kuomintang who were fighting the Japanese. None of these people really had similar principles, but they were fighting a common enemy, the Japanese. And that was the beginning of the United Front. As soon as they defeated the Japanese, United Front was finished.
So here's my only question, and this is what I keep like battling with in my brain. And Jared and I have talked about this, which is the system is built to not allow a third party to be successful, right? We're all very, very clear on that. And so if part of the goal is not to build the third party, how is the ballot going to happen? Because that's my big question, right? Like, you can't do write-ins in every state, right? You can't run in every state if you're not backed by some sort of party line that has enough signatures. Like, there's so many different parts that go into getting him on the ballot for this coalition to even work behind him to try and give him any power. How does it work without that piece? Because that's the part I don't hear anybody, like, I hear a lot of people saying, like, I support Dr. West, and I'm like, okay, I'm all for it. If you support him, that's great. My questions are more that I'm just not really clear on what he's running on. So that's what I'm still waiting for clarity about. That all said, you still have to run a presidential campaign. You still have to be able to have people either write you in the states where it's allowed, or you have to be able to be on a ballot line where that has to be the process, or you have to be able to, be on the ballot itself independently, running under the umbrella of whoever. Like, there's so many pieces, and it's intentional that there are all these pieces, right? Like, it's definitely built this way, and the DNC is going to definitely jump in no matter how this is being done to try and prevent him from getting that access. So I'm still trying to understand how any of this is working without building a party, so that at least in the states where you have to have a party in order to be on the ballot to run as president, how is it going to happen if people aren't coalescing behind a party?
Well, I think there's a difference. I'm sorry, CoCo, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, and Brother Dhoruba, I feel like I'm hearing what you're saying is that it's not that he's not running on the ballot with the Green Party. It's that us in the community, we're organized to hold our votes based on specific issues that we're looking for, and that we are in coalition with him running on that ticket very specifically. But as individuals, we're not necessarily joining the Green Party just because we're supporting Dr. West in this campaign. But we're more or less organizing. If he is running on the third party ticket with the Green Party, we're saying that we must be organized in order for him to gain our vote and to hear what we're actually asking for materially within our communities. So I just wanted to feel like there was two different things that I was hearing from both of you.
And it is, and I understood that part. I think I'm just confused as to how any of it is going to happen if there isn't work being done.
Well, because practically speaking, but Dhoruba, just real quick, because even practically speaking, without membership in the party, just as an example, it's not possible to vote for him to be nominated by the party.
We're not talking about nomination. I think what we're talking about at the ballot box. I guess we're assuming that he's going to get the nomination. That might be a hell of an assumption. True that, but I think we was talking past that.
I understand, but what I'm saying is so. Part of what I'm, to the extent that we need an electoral home, is the question I keep running up against, whether I'm trying to do this after party fantasy or Green Party, whatever. So I'm saying that not that we're joining the Green Party because we have some illusion about what the Green Party is or isn't, or what it can and cannot do, but it's that to the extent that electoral politics are any part of any strategy, it seems like we need to get in something. Either we have to create something, and that's sort of what I would want.
I hear that. Okay. But what I would say is what we need to do is we need to create a radical a center of pressure, so that Cornel, given his philosophical bent and his his background and stuff, that Cornel could then, the same way he does now, say that there's many Black people in our community, you understand, who are suffering homeless, who are doing this, who support my my position, but they ain't trying to hear some of that stuff y'all talking in the Green Party like this, So what I'm saying is we got to push him to the left, even if he runs as the Green Party candidate. You know, when Eldridge Cleaver ran as a candidate for the Peace and Freedom Party out of California, he ran for the presidency as the Peace and Freedom Party of California. I know some of y'all might be too young to remember that, but this was 1968, and so he traveled around the country. The purpose of Eldridge taking that position with the Peace and Freedom Party was they were anti-war, they were anti-racist, and they had all these progressive things. But Eldridge didn't encourage anybody to join the Peace and Freedom Party. He used that as a mechanism, and he used their resources as a mechanism to organize the Black Panther Party. So when he came to New York on the Peace and Freedom Party campaign, the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party started, not the New York chapter of the Peace and Freedom Party. So we might be in a similar situation here, where if Cornel really could excite a base outside of these Boule Negro politicians, if he could excite a base amongst activists like the sisters we got here, like Kalonji, like yourselves, like all of those who on the left, you know, we the broke ass left. You know, ain't nobody on the left got no money. You see what I'm saying? But we got a lot of energy. We got a vision, and you know, we ain't afraid. Okay, and so what I'm saying is that Cornel admitted that I don't know much about the Green Party, so he needs somebody like us on the left, like me, to say, you know what the Green Party is doing in Europe? What is the Green Party going to say about Zionism and the white supremacist settler state of Israel? I know what the Green Party in Europe says. They down with Israel, you see? So now that's a litmus test for not only him, but for the Green Party, huh? Because if he gets nominated on the line that Israel is a European settler state, hey, I'll vote for him. And I don't vote, you see? So what I'm saying is, he has to push the Green Party to the left, and we have to push him to the left. And what comes out at the end, hopefully, by circumstances and conditions, is that those people in the Green Party who realize, who take an anti-racist, anti-white supremacist position, who support reparations, who support our struggles for unions, who support our struggles for education, that those people in the Green Party that support all these things, if the Green Party is not down with it, that's not a good home for them. That's not a place that they would want to stay. You see, so I'm looking at Cornel much like I looked at the black politician that I mentioned before that gets into office and doesn't try to make a career out of it. That he basically tears up everything, and it's impossible for anybody coming back behind him to put it back together the same way. That's how I'm looking at Cornel. That if he runs for office, that we build a united front that could get black folks to understand who they are, by reading George Jackson, by getting quotes from George Jackson, that actually gets on the press conference. You see, that actually gets in front of MSNBC and not the bootlicker Al Sharpton. You see, that we get in front of, well, you know, George Jackson said about America's white working class that this is the most racist, reactionary class in America. So what do you have to say about that, Mr. Teamster Union organizer? But nobody ever going to say that to him unless there's a campaign like a Cornel West. Because they'll call him on TV, but they won't expect him to say that or even intimate that, you see. So it's the enemy controls the parameters of all the issues in the debates. And so whenever we try to break into those things, they shut us out and we become extremists, we become crazy people, conspiracy theorists, and all of that. Cornel's campaign gives perhaps those of us who do have some radical revolutionary politics opportunity to move into the periphery, if the very least, of the main paradigms of debate. So that ideas of fascism comes out. The idea that America was a European settler state just like Israel. That America has created an electoral college system in order to maintain wealth and property for white men. And that's why we don't have a popular vote. That's why winner takes all. That's why Donald Trump could win the presidency and he lost the majority of people voting. So people need to understand why the system is constructed the way it is. And the only way they're going to understand that is if we have someone that could articulate it in various ways, appeal to other people in various ways, and then say at the very least that I got this community behind me that ain't thinking about all the stuff you're talking about. We're trying to build for survival. We want our people to survive America. And in order to do that, we have to have our own political party. We have to have our own power base. And this is just one mechanism by which we could begin to crystallize who is on what side of the barricades, who is on our side and who is against us, and educate our people so that they would understand that the centralization of the police don't mean that when you call 911, ain't nobody gonna come. You see, that's deeper than that. You see. And that when we talk about homelessness, that we have all these high rises that's empty and people are sleeping on the streets. What does that mean? Mao Zedong, for his credit, disavowed organizing in the urban areas upon the instructions of the Communist Party in Moscow, and went to the rural areas and found out that people hated the landlords. And he mobilized the landlords. We need to do the same thing. We need to see in our community what our people hate, get them to understand the definition of it, how it fits into the society, and therefore, how can we organize to protect ourselves from it, you see? And so I think Cornel's campaign offers that opportunity. I think if anything, Cornel is the type of brother you would send to a conference in which you wanted to organize or build a consensus for a peace agreement. Me, you wouldn't send me to the conference. You wouldn't send Kalonji to a conference. You send us if we don't want no resolution. Then send me. Well, let's send this Negro because we know we ain't gonna get no resolution. Everybody gonna wind up hating his ass before the day is out. You see, but if you want everybody to come together, send Cornel. He'll pray together. Talk about my lovely Ku Klux Klan brother. You just misled me. I'll shoot the Ku Klux Klan brother. I ain't trying to talk to him. I ain't trying to relate to him. And he ain't my brother. So I mean, and I mean that's how I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it as an opportunity for us to clarify to our people who our enemies are and how we have to organize ourselves for survival.
All right. Appreciate it.
Draw those lines. Draw those lines. That's what I'm saying.
I'd like to see those lines drawn real clearly by Dr. West.
Well, you only can. This is one thing you got to understand in an organization. Never, ever give a person an assignment that they cannot fulfill. So you don't never get disappointed.
That is correct. You're right. And what you're saying about bringing these organizations in, and I think my big issue is I'm trying to figure out on the Green Party side, how do they make sure that he has a space to do what he needs to do in order for all of the people who may come together outside of the Green Party to support him from the outside. So I guess that's where I keep getting stuck, because everything you're saying is 100% correct. And 100%, like I'm following you very, very fully. My concern is on the Green Party side, they're going to, as a party and as the group that has to get him on the ballot and has to get him on the ticket and has to get him on the line and has to, all those things, they don't have a wing and a prayer if there aren't people working both those angles. So that's where my concern is what is going to happen if we have all of these people outside of the Green Party who are staunchly behind Dr. West and fully supportive of him, but you don't have the work happening in the party to allow him to actually be in a space where all the people outside of the party can do anything.
I don't think that would happen. You know why? Because the dynamics of organizations and the dynamics of this, if the Green, let's just say he got through the nomination process, he got nominated, right? And so he's going to get nominated on a ticket that basically the Green Party agrees on, okay? it might not be the politics that we're talking about in terms of where it should go fully and everything. So that's our job for Cornel to be able to sit down with and these are a lot of some of these white folks that I be watching on YouTube too. They got a cogent analysis of capitalism and imperialism and the power structure, and he's in touch and he's on their programs and he knows them personally. So what he has to be able to say, look, just like Martin was able to say about Malcolm, say, look, man, you don't want him, so you might as well deal with me. You see, now you don't want them crazy people out there that's talking about Cornel, because they tear some shit up. You see, and so remember that the Black Liberation flag is red, black, and green. So your color is up in there. You see, the red is up in there, the original people, and then there's us, the original inhabitants of America, and us. So you could say, well, I'm a nationalist. I believe in Garvey's, red, black, and green. You see, RB, yeah, we call Green Party. But I think that what we really got to get Cornel to understand is that he really can't fudge principle in terms of the nomination process. That he has to be clear that on principle around those key issues that affect our lives. You see, and I think that's up to us to put together the type of manifesto. I don't know what you want to call it, and bring that and say, Cornel, this is a matter of principle. How would you articulate this? Or can we do this to here, or whatever the case may be? So I think we should ask him that question the next time he comes back. And I think by then he's going to have more information than he has now. And ask him that question. How do we move the Green Party to the left? I think this is a question that Ajamu had to deal with. I think his candidacy with Jill Stein, had its limitations, and it had its limitations precisely because of the politics of the Green Party, not Ajamu. You see, and so I think that they learned from that. I think that they're looking at Cornel as a more popular or manifestation of where people are at today, given the migrant question. The migrant question, for instance, how would Cornel answer that as a member of the Green Party? How would he answer the immigrant problem? Well, imperialism. People are fleeing to these countries, fleeing to the U.S. because of what the U.S. did in their home country. Imperialism. Nobody says that. But our coalition partner should say that. That's a principle. We're not lying here. We're going to tell the truth. That's what Cornel said. He has to tell the truth. That's why when he sat here and we talked to us, once the sister showed that invasion was the wrong word to use, he thought about that shit. You see? And because he has a grasp of history, he said, I see what you're saying. So now it's up to him to how does he translate that behind the scenes with a bunch of white liberals and people, who are trying to save the planet and all of that shit. How does he articulate that there? He's best suited to do that better than you and me. You see what I'm saying? So then he could come out and say, look, this is how that went with them, or this is how they think the Green Party should move. Now it's up to us to make a decision on what amounts of support we're going to give to them. You see, so I think it's all a process, sister, and I think that we really have to push from the left. We have to push from the left because, as the sister, left to Cornel, man, he be loving everybody. You see, and and like I was trying to tell him, man, don't look good for the home team, man, and we'd be dreaming out of season, man. Yeah, come on. We have to survive these crackers that's armed to the teeth You understand? Just talking about, telling our children that slavery was basically a decision that was a marketing decision. This was basically a trade, and sorry for your inconvenience, but man, fuck that. I ain't with that shit. You see? So he'll explain it to him, oh, my brother. It didn't happen that way. Yeah, I mean, he might as well get Kanye West on the campaign. You see what I'm saying? But he has an appeal that you and I don't have. You see? And we have an appeal that he doesn't have. And that's the streets and the people in our community on their streets. So if we could define to them who their enemies are and how we have to organize for survival based on our analysis and our understanding, then he would have served our purpose. And that united front would have served our purpose. Then it's up to us to give up our little fiefdoms and our little organizations and form a black political party. And that's the problem right now. We got a lot of black folks that are brilliant and activists who are courageous, but everybody wants to hold on to their little piece of organization and their little microphone on YouTube. And that's why we don't have a united front against fascism. That's why we don't have even an approximation of a black political party. Okay, so I'm not looking at Cornel to actually substitute for that. I'm looking at him and that campaign, if he gets nominated, as a unique opportunity during the crisis of capitalism in the European nation state, in its foreign policy and its domestic policy, as an opportunity to organize working people across class lines, across racial differences, and at the same time permit us enough space to organize the black community so that we could survive America. And that's my concern, surviving America.
He needs you on his weekly call. Can we get Brother Dhoruba on Dr. West's weekly call, please?
Not once has Dhoruba been denied an opportunity to be around. So it's just a matter of his timing, his schedule. Like I said, even today, we didn't even tell Kalonji he was going to be here. If he could be here, he could just be here. So
that's why he started beefing about the phone calls.
Yeah.
You don't never answer my phone call.
But you were just on his show the other day. So that's y'all funny, man. But if you're available next, in 2 weeks, come on back, Dhoruba, and we can, like I said, even for this time, I can fall back and just push the buttons so we can get more people on. So it's not that.
I've been trying. I got folks over here watching you guys, and you know that, and there's folks in Austria and Germany and everything watching y'all, and I be telling y'all got to watch this as a political education class, because it's very important, and you see it works out because even though they might not have 100,000 people or 10,000 people or even 100 at a Mumia demonstration in front of the U.S. consulate in Austria. This world right now is in sore need of solidarity between oppressed people. Look at France. Look at how it exploded. And the French are trying to dance around everything, but they're goddamn racist ass. They're trying to dance around racism. Look what the Italians did with boat people. Saw the boat sinking, saw hundreds of Africans drowning and turned the other way and left. Towed the boat out of their territorial waters. Look at the Tunisians dumping thousands and thousands of women, black African women and children in the middle of the desert. And now one black elected official in none of these committees said a point of order. What's the U.S. position on Tunisia, a violation of human rights and doing all that? They ain't said nothing. But these same Negroes, some of them opportunistically talked about the Haitians being beaten at the border. You see? But what are they considering now in the United Nations? Sending a military force into Haiti. And where's our black elected officials? Quiet as church mice. You see, so you know, I think even Cornel's campaign challenges them, because we really need some of these Negroes to come out that's in the Democratic Party to come out against it. That would be wonderful.
It's definitely. I mean, yeah.
Then it's
if
on.
he gets the nomination, it's definitely. Well, that'll definitely happen.
Then it's on.
And we should have like a free BPM T-shirt. Whoever guesses correctly, the first member to CBC to come out on record and condemn Cornel West's campaign. Who would be first? That'd be interesting. We should.
I got to find out who the members of the CBC is, because
I know I got to get caught up on a list. I know I'm not even.
Send a list to all the members of the CBC, and let's do a straw poll. You see, and we could do a straw poll too on Biden and the Orange Man. Which one is going to drop dead first? We could do a straw poll on that.
It's a race to the grave.
Homeboy ain't making it to the finish line. I'm trying to tell you now, he ain't making it. I mean, he could hardly make it down the stairs on Air Force One. So he definitely ain't making it to the finish line. And he's like Reagan. You know, Reagan was senile as a motherfucker when he went out, but it was kept a secret.
And as we like to remind folks around here, say it with me, he died on my wedding day. During the wedding.
It was the ancestors that did that.
Hey, June 5th, 2004. I'll love it forever.
June 5th? Yeah. That's the day I got captured. June 5th, 1971.
See? And you know who could perform my wedding ceremony? Father Earl Neal, who laid George Jackson to rest. So it's all kinds of connections. I'm trying to tell you, man. I'm trying to tell you.
Well, you know,
so much makes sense now.
I mean, you know, I ain't on no juju stuff, man, but I do know I do know that human events all have a spiritual consequence on humanity, on individuals and on people, you know, because we're not just flesh and blood alone. You know, we might disagree on, you know, whether there's a God or not and all of that stuff. But none of us are getting out this life alive. So we need to understand that part. So the only value of us being here is that when people speak our name again, you know, they speak it with some degree of love and respect and memory, because that's how you live again when they speak your name. You see? So I'm just saying, I think, sister, that what you're saying about homeboy got to be a little more straight to the point. I think that's the type of wing in our movement that we need. Yo, brother, come on, man, stop all that rhetoric, man. I don't even listen to Coltrane. Now, what was you saying? You see what I'm saying? So we need that. You see, we need that. And that's why I said I've been at events where he was able to a mixed audience break down things like oligarchy and ruling elite and the history of those and how wealth controls politics and all of that stuff. So these are things that we really do need. But I think his major benefit for us is a sledgehammer against the black misleadership class. You know. None of them is even think. I mean, even Jesse Jackson in his opportunistic prime ran for president. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And he had all these Negroes out there talking about run, Jesse, run. You see? And he had his detractors, and it was the same thing with the sister that ran for president from New York, Shirley Chisholm. Sure. You see? And she was the first black woman to declare herself for president. And there was haters on her, you know. And Shirley Chisholm wasn't no radical or revolutionary. Far from it, you see. But you know, they came out of the woodwork on Girlfriend. You see what I'm saying? And so, you know, there's that history. And I think we need to remind Cornel of that history. We need to remind Cornel how it was the black misleadership class that encouraged Jesse to run, because they were the ones that benefited most from the Democratic Party, for Jesse bringing people into the Democratic Party. He brought a lot of black folks into the Democratic Party in that campaign. You see what I'm saying? And so we're looking forward to Cornel taking a lot of black folks out of the Democratic Party in this campaign. You see, especially the Bernie Sanders folks that got behind Bernie Sanders. And I told folks both times that Bernie Sanders was a sheepdog. I said, you know what he's going to do? He's a sheepdog, man. I mean, you know, I ain't hating on Bernie or nothing, you know. If I had white folks to cap for a pallbearer for these crackers, I would have Bernie. You know, but you know, he was a sheepdog, and hopefully, I pray that Cornel is not a sheepdog for them. That in fact, he will extract those young black people from that party who say, "Man, Cornel really speaks to my issues." Not these folks in the Democratic Party, man. What am I doing here?
Somebody put in the chat they're gonna have to drag Obama out. To
you know, Obama.
Yeah, they're gonna bring him off of Martha's Vineyard.
That's why I said we got to push him to the left. Let us start on Obama, the warmonger, Mr. Drone Central, the drone in chief. Oh, let us start on that Negro. Come to find out, his mama or somebody, was it mama or his dad was a CIA agent? Man, don't trot him out. They ain't gonna try him out.
I'm saying they're gonna trot him. The Democrats will trot him out.
No, they ain't gonna trot him out. He's toxic right now.
To criticize West to keep black voters in the Democratic Party. That's
too obvious. They're going now your homeboy, the one you was talking about, that governor,
Westmore. Yeah, they'll bring him too. Yeah.
Well, that's who they're gonna bring. Because everybody knows Obama was a sellout now, even his backers. They know he could have did much more than he didn't. So even the black folks in the Democratic Party, even his apologists know this now. They ain't gonna try them out against Cornel. You know, the ones we got to worry about, like I said, we got to worry about them crazy ass MAGA fools, and that's what we got to worry about. That's why I was half-ass teasing him about you gonna get the NOI security. I know damn sure ain't trusting the Secret Service.
They'll be investigating him.
Man, please.
Talk about security. Anyway. Well, look, good people. Yeah, I think we all probably got to get out of here. But I definitely want to thank you, Dhoruba, CoCo, Renee, Jacquie, Kalonji. Who am I forgetting? Everybody in the audience, thanks for coming through. Thanks, of course, to Dr. West. We'll see you all in 2 weeks as far as this series goes, and make sure you got the bell rung and all the like, shares, and subscribes done so you don't miss all the other stuff popping up on the platform. And with that, thanks again. Peace, everybody. Only if you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.